My name is Doug Eckery. I'm an assistant director at the USDA APHIS Wildlife Services National Wildlife Research Center, or the NWRC. Mission of Wildlife Services is to be a federal leader and use our expertise to resolve human-wildlife conflicts and provide a place where humans and wildlife can coexist and also be mindful of the environment which we all share. And as our mission is in wildlife services, we are very much about having an integrated management approach. And I think that's what's necessary for all of these wildlife issues, is an integrated approach. And I think fertility control has a place and can have a place in many of those integrated approaches. Some of the projects that I've been involved with, there's been squirrels and goats, feral goats in the UK, feral cattle and wild boar in Hong Kong. I've been involved with being down under with Australia with different marsupials, with kangaroos and wallabies in Australia. And most recently, I got involved with a project for hippos, an invasive species in Colombia. And so there's a lot of things that go into developing an effective fertility control. There's first the physiology or the biology of the animal. We need to come up with some target molecule or some reproductive mechanism that we need to target. And that's a challenge in itself, depending on the species as to how that might happen. And then the other, and it might even be a bigger challenge, is how would you deliver that to whatever species that you're looking at. Throughout my career, we've explored a number of different options. One would be what we would call a non-transmissible form, which would be a bait or an injection, like we would use for a horse or something like that. But we were also looking at a transmissible form of fertility control, which would have the greatest utility in one sense, because it would just spread itself throughout the population. But I think the risks go up there as well. But then when you put the whole package together, not only do you have the physiology and then the delivery mechanism, but then you have the social science or the human dimensions aspect. Is this going to be acceptable? Do people want this? Will they want it? Whatever that might be. There's the regulatory component to it. So getting something registered, being allowed to use. And then of course there's the environment or the ecosystem in which you're targeting. So those species share an environment. What impact would it have on that ecosystem? And so there's a lot of things that go into a successful fertility control. And so at the moment, Gonacon, the vaccine that we have, that's only by injection. And so it could either be hand injected or through a dart gun, something like that. So Gonacon is registered in the United States for use in white-tailed deer, female white-tailed deer, horses, wild horses, and also now in prairie dogs. That's a relatively new registration that we have. We would like to come up with something that's orally active as well. And like say, if it was for something like a squirrel or a rodent or something like that, it would have to be. Like I said before, you can't go around injecting all the rodents everywhere. We've talked, feral swine is a big issue here in the States, a very destructive invasive species. And depends on your objective. Again, it might be disease, it might be crop damage, it might be destruction of sacred sites, it might be sea turtle depredation. So there's a lot of reasons why feral swine need to be managed. And models have shown, we've done modeling here with some of our quantitative scientists at the center, that have shown in certain scenarios the combination of lethal and fertility control could be better than one or the other by themselves. And so there is really a big appetite for it. People want it, and people, as we've seen, are willing to try some different things as well. But I think our challenge right now is still having the better tools. We have some tools, but we're very limited in what we have available to us right now. To get something registered, of course, you first have to develop the product and do all the testing that you're confident that it's going to work. And then it kind of switches gears. So research and development is one thing, and that can take in itself quite a long time. From an idea to something that you think is going to work, 5 to 10 years are numbers that are thrown out quite often. And then there's a switch that happens. Then you're no longer in research, now you're in the regulatory world. And so from scratch, from the idea generation through registration, you're looking at probably 15 or 20 years in order to get through that. And so some would, sometimes it feels a little bit frustrating because you have a product that works, we know it works, why can't we just use it? Well, that regulatory process takes a long time. And it should. We need to be careful. We need to know that what we're doing is right by the species we're targeting, those around it, for the environment, and of course for human health and safety as well. Because I think, it's important. The Wildlife Services mission is to help resolve conflicts. And that often is in the form of damage management. And so that's really our focus. And the goal is to reduce that, is to mitigate the damage. And so that doesn't always mean reducing a population by whatever number. It may involve some of that, but really the ultimate goal is to mitigate that damage. Whether that damage be crop damage or depredation on livestock, it could be the spread of disease, it could be bird strikes and aircraft, whatever that damage is. And so we need to use our expertise to find the most practical methods of prevention and or control that will prevent that damage best. And then again, understand what tools are there, what are available, and then what would be most effective to mitigate that damage or that conflict.